she's little and she loves me too. My lucky day.
All right. Good morning. The hummingbird is there, and so are we. Good morning again. Welcome from Leuven, the center of the world these days when it comes to cybersecurity experts from home. My name is Alexander Slechts. I'm representing LSEC, which is the non-for-profit association working with the security industry and towards end users like yourselves. We have a series of webinars that we call cybersecurity experts from home. This being one of them every Thursday morning on identity and access management. And thanks for joining in. Today we're going to have another very interesting topic is identity and access management in the cloud. I don't think, as far as we know today, in the last couple of weeks and months that we have seen the world changing, that we can continue without the cloud. I think that's the basic premise that we have seen, that we have understood, not only for our Netflix, not only for our Spotifys, but actually for all of our different business applications that we utilize on a day-to-day basis. In that respect, it is, of course, quite easy for us to reach out to Amazon, to reach out to Azure, but sometimes it could be a bit complicated, especially when you need to connect many different business applications, both SaaS applications that could already be in the cloud, as well as still on-prem applications, applications that have been around for many, many years, and that you are not really happy to open up to immediately from anywhere in the world. So it causes a bit of headaches in terms of who could actually get access to those systems. And if you have a couple of hundreds, or maybe in some cases that we know of even thousands of applications, as an enterprise, how do you manage that properly? So that's definitely one of the topics that we're going to talk about today. A couple of words about LSEC. We are what we call and how we call ourselves a digital security catalyst. We are a catalyst between users and supply. We are a catalyst between the innovators from the research and the innovators from the industry, and the both the users as well as the suppliers. And how do we do that? We bring together people in activities like these, and hopefully when the let's say virus disappears and when the sky turns completely blue again, for us to be able to walk around outside without continuously having to wash our hands and having at least the feeling that we're getting affected. That means that time that we're going to reconnect also on a face-to-face level, obviously. But in the meantime, we would like to continue supporting our community, and the webinars are one way to do this. There's also many other activities that we do. We organize roundtables, CISO roundtables. If you're interested in participating, do let us know. We organize different types of innovative activities where we bring end users and the supply together in new types of developments. Sometimes understanding what some of those new technologies like homomorphic encryption and things like IoT security could actually mean. Also the application of AI in terms of cybersecurity, how that could actually impact not only the end user, but also the business. And one of those activities is, for instance, a project called Trinity, whereby we are involved in trying to bring cybersecurity into the robotics. And this is at least one of the applications where we are looking into doing those things. So considering things like software bill of materials, like reference integrity architecture models are the things that we are considering there, which we might also apply, of course, in other domains. And this is another example of such a world where the more and more we also see the application of cloud on a day-to-day basis. As we speak, we are actually working on integrating cloud applications for food factories. So also here in the industry, in the vertical industry of manufacturing, we do see cloud and access to cloud systems popping up quite heavily and quite intrinsically. So another of those examples within the activities that we do is connecting these types of IoT, industrial IoT devices into a cloud environment, and trying to get an understanding of what, in this case, machines are doing, and presenting them in an interesting platform like this one. So that's a bit in short for today. I'll come back to this one later on, but for now, I would say I'm going to hand over the words to Kurt. And Kurt, you have to turn back on your microphone in any case and your camera. And I hope Kurt will be able to share with us his views and ideas and insights in the world of identity and access management from Trustbuilder. So Kurt, the floor is yours. Just to let you know that your camera is still off.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Yeah, sorry, the camera is maybe not a good idea in these Corona times. Without access to hairdressers and stuff like that.
I understand. I understand. We won't hold it against you.
And so yeah, Ulrich, thank you for inviting me for this this opportunity to talk a bit about identity and access management in combination with cloud. It was a very last minute invitation, but thank you. And yeah, I will try to talk as little about our product and as much about the need of going into cloud and connecting cloud applications in combination with your applications that you need to access, whether they are in the cloud or abroad. But to do this, and yeah, because of the base of the presentation that we have, it will be related to the Trustbuilder product. So maybe just a quick overview with Trustbuilder. Trustbuilder has started out of Secure IT, which was for over 20 years an identity and access management consultancy company who started creating their own product called Trustbuilder. We've been starting this product for more than 10 years, but we launched it as a product and became a product company 3 years ago, and we're pushing forward to move forward with this product. This is just a list of customers that we have. Why am I showing this? Is because the main of our customers are customers with a consumer-facing application, and that is basically what our product is intended to do, although you can also use it for employee access. When you want to connect applications in the cloud towards users, you need a product like Trustbuilder or an identity and access management system, which makes those connections possible between different web applications, mobile applications. But what we're seeing more and more today as well is automated applications. And with automated applications, what I mean with that is IoT devices, devices which are where you as a user don't necessarily need to log on to, or applications, other applications, microservices or APIs. And what we with Trustbuilder try to do with this is we have on one side those interfaces towards those applications, web applications, mobile applications, and then the applications that are running within you as a company, be it local or where you need to connect them towards cloud applications that exist. Now, if we are looking into how we are going to connect those, these are a bit of the features that you need. I'm not going to go through every single one of those, but especially the ones that are focusing on cloud applications. So let's start first with when a user wants to log on to one of your applications, you need to be sure that it is that user. And what we can see today is that instead of using standard username and passwords, there are many ways to make to use cloud applications, cloud identity systems, to make sure that it is the user that you are talking to, or to get more information about new users that you are connecting to. In Belgium, we're a bit lucky with the Belgium EID card, which is available for yeah, over 30 years or almost 30 years now. But we see a big move there, going more to cloud applications, like, for example, even in Belgium as well, with the It's Me initiative. And we have in multiple European countries a bit of the same structure, where identities are not used for a single company anymore, but are used in a federated way. So you have this one organization which is providing identities towards organizations and companies. These organizations that are providing that can be government organizations, it can be governments themselves, like we see in Belgium with the EID card, or it can be private organizations which are using some kind of a verification of that identity. Like in Belgium, we have It's Me. In the Netherlands, you have ID&AM or e-scanning. There's quite a lot of those systems, but we know them as well as you can use as well some more commercial applications as well. Like Facebook login is very popular. The Google login is very popular, and recently Apple also came up with their own social login medium based in the cloud, where you can connect towards to get information about those users. And that makes it very easy for a user, because what they needed to do in the past is for every time they want to subscribe to a service from a company, they needed to fill in their email address and leave their email address with that company, create a password, and of course users don't like to usually don't have the way of changing a password for every new application. So it was always the same password that there are used in those within those online applications. And with the hacks that are coming, what you did see is that once a credential is stolen in one company, it could be used over multiple companies. And that's something where this federated authentication mechanisms and social authentication mechanisms can play a role in increasing security for those users. Because when you're using federated authentication, in your user database, you're not storing anymore the user credentials, or you don't need to store them anymore, but you're just pointing towards the federated identity provider. The way you can do that depends a bit on the identity provider, but usually they work with standard protocols such as OAuth or OpenID Connect. Sometimes SAML. It depends a bit on the organization. Or what they do as well is make some proprietary connections to make that work. Eden is, for example, one of those examples who uses as a basis SAML, but they put their own coding on top of it to work that. So what we can help you with there as Trustbuilder is, because we have all those identity systems integrated into our platform, it will make it a lot easier to connect toward those identity systems towards your applications. Now, the second thing, if you want to identifying those users is one thing, but of course you want to make sure that it's that user actually that is logging onto it on the one hand, but you also want to make it as easy for those users to log on. What we saw in the past with the banking applications, where you needed to have this hardware authenticator to log on in combination with your bank cards. That's fine for if it's a high security application, but if you just need to have some lightweight authentication, make it easy for the user and provide some kind of a consumer-friendly ways of authentication, you need to find the balance between allowing something which is easy enough for the user, but still has that kind of a security. And luckily, in these days, it's possible to make a mixture of all those kind of applications. So you can, of course, you can still work with the username and password, which is one of the easiest ways, of course, to allow access to those users. But it's of course not that secure. So it's only advisable for standard applications which don't contain too much personal information of users that they can access. Now, but since you don't want to make the hurdle too big, what you can do is work with techniques like step-up authentication and single sign-on, so that users, once they are authenticated, that you can give them access to everything which is available with that specific security level. But if you need to give them more access, you can ask for stronger authentication levels at that moment, and still add two-factor authentication or by means of a text message or a real authenticator that can be added on top of that. Once those users are authenticated, of course, then in some cases you need to make some validations what they are doing, and during that you can ask for more information. Now, what we are doing now with Trustbuilder as well is we are using attributes of those users, taking into account from where he is logging on which device he is logging in, what kind of a transaction that he is doing, and through artificial intelligence, we're checking whether such transactions are secure or not secure, and if we're not 100% certain, we can ask for more credentials and more verification of that transaction to be sure that we are certain that it is that user and that user is allowed to perform this kind of an action. So by doing this, we can have identified the user, we know who he is, and we're certain that we're working with that kind of user and that he has the right access rights to access some kind of applications. Now, what we need to do in the next phase is making sure that on top of verifying all this, is we need to make the connections towards the applications as well. And to work with those, Internet is providing standard connectors. Of course, everybody knows HTTP and HTTPS, where you can integrate your own applications through technologies like SOAP or REST protocols. But if you want to offer single sign-on, and there are also standard applications of or standard protocols like SAML, OAuth, OpenID Connect, or WSFET, which allow you to connect towards cloud applications from your access management system. And there are a lot of standard applications, SaaS applications, that are already using those kind of technologies like SAML and OAuth, allowing you to easily connect your users, your internal users, towards those applications. And it's the identity and access management system then that will broker between all the users that you have and the applications that are available, whether it's in the cloud or on-premise. So we can provide there, you can work there with any kind of protocol that is available on top of there, but you could also make it possible to create your own connectors and make them work together. And that's interesting because working that way, you could have identity providers using one protocol and applications using another protocol. So technically it would be impossible to make them communicate to each other, but through this access management brokering system, we can make the translation between those two protocols and giving access, having the users authenticated and then giving them access to certain applications. For example, one of those things that we are doing for an American organization that in fact is connecting Facebook users, so their organization wants their users to authenticate through Facebook, and then giving them access on SharePoint within that organization. So these kind of protocol translations are possible when using an access management brokering system that can make the translation between those different protocols. So in this case, we're still talking always about users trying to authenticate towards applications, but we're seeing more and more today is it's not just about those users, but also about applications trying to connect to each other without even any kind of user interaction. And then we're talking about microservices. When microservices want to access your applications, and typical examples, I always use the example of KBC using giving access management towards to their users, and thus enriching their platform by adding microservices towards, for example, the lane, the railway station, so you can buy train tickets through their applications. Now, if you want to do this, of course, one of the things that is very critical is that those users, those microservices are also authenticated in the path of their transaction. It's not just at the gateway that they need to be authenticated, but because you have lots of those microservices in place in your organization, you need to make sure that one microservice is allowed to access the next microservice, and that's also where access management systems can help by authenticating each of those steps in the microservices process to make sure that they are still allowed to access the different the next level of service. Let me quickly skip this one, and that's a bit also the trend what we're seeing and today, going more and more in cloud-based environments. It's not just about giving users access just to your applications, but it's more and more where companies are becoming ecosystems or providing ecosystems towards their users. Of course, if they do this, it needs to be they need to give their users also a secure and convenient user experience with single sign-on, and preferably also without passwords, so making it very easy for those users to use all the different services. And as we go into the future, it needs to be scalable. It needs to be fast, because if you're not you're not the only company integrating microservices, everybody is trying to push forward to those microservices, and we're seeing it. We already see it since a couple of years now in the financial industries, but we're also seeing it in insurance, in HR. Basically, any kind of organization is trying to add services which are not your core services on top of what they are offering to you as their core product. That has a big impact on identity and access management. If you look in the past, access management was mainly for employees giving access to company applications. So you had to authenticate those users by using a username and a password. And the more that they needed to go towards cloud applications, of course, you added two-factor authentication. Next steps were giving your partners as well access to your systems, your business partners, or your consultancy partners who need to give access to those, get access to your systems. And the first way to do this was by creating an account for those users of your partners into your own AD, but that becomes very costly and very difficult to manage. So you wanted to have something like a delegated identity system where you can use the identity systems of your partner to give access to their users towards your system. And we're talking about those consumers. If you want to secure the access towards consumers, and you need to roll out strong authentication mechanisms towards those consumers, well, it will hinder your business because, of course, it's a very costly thing if you need to give some two-factor authentication mechanisms towards your consumers. but it also becomes a cumbersome process, and you might lose some consumers if you make the login process too difficult. You see it especially in e-commerce environments where of course, you don't want those users to look for a hardware device just to make them to make a purchase in your web shop. And what we see now moving forward is also those IoT devices through APIs and microservices accessing all your applications. And then you really need something which, first of all, can make it secure, but also allows you to avoid using those passwords. So what we're seeing, and Gartner and McKinsey and everybody is looking at it the same way. If you want to survive as a company in the future, we really need to work on those ecosystem, adding services, new services towards your customers, because if you're not doing it, you can make sure that your competitors are doing it, and if it's not your direct competitors, you can be also sure that it might be some competitors which you don't know by today that will offer those services in the future. In the finance sector, they're really seeing that coming, where new fintechs and also big techs are companies like Facebook, like Apple, like Google, are moving into the financial sector, offering new services towards them, and making banks, especially in America, you can see this, where banks are just becoming places where you can store some money, and even that is becoming less and less necessary for consumers, because they can work with companies like Apple and Facebook. So you can, if you want to go forward with this, you need to build your own ecosystem, and that's a bit where Trustbuilder can help by accessing all those different kind of applications, as well as linking your customers towards all the different services that you are having. And that's what we want to achieve with the Trustbuilder ecosystem. Basically, if you look at most IAM systems today, what they can do, and what we are doing as well there, is linking your company towards federated identities, identity providers, like It's Me, like Belgium EID, with cloud applications. Basically, those are the standard cloud applications like Salesforce, Office 365, which are available to everybody. Now, where we want to make a difference is not just focusing on this employee cloud-based system, but adding new services as well, where we will go to financial services, signing services, railway stations, airports, tickets, making those connectors available on our platform, so that you can choose as a company to integrate which kind of services that you want to add to your portfolio and give to your customers on top of that. But we want to go even a bit further, and I take here the example of the financial services. If you look at banking, with the new regulation about PSD2 and open banking, financial institutions are required to open up their authentication mechanisms and their accounts of their users, and basically all their current database of users and their customers towards other companies. Now, the requirements that they need to do is okay, it's very minimal. They need to offer the authentication and give an overview of customers' financial information, if those customers want this, towards other banks, other financial services. So what we want to do there is offer those financial services, or what we are doing there is offering to those financial services additional benefits by opening up their systems with with Trustbuilder, so that that they don't just need to give away their authentication, but that they can also materialize on the data that they're having of their consumers, of their customers, when they want to or when they need to give access to other companies of this. An example of this, which is even used by some financial institutions, is that if you as a consumer are going to a web shop and you want to buy, let's say, a television, that the bank, through their APIs, will let you know whether you can afford that kind of a television, but also when if there are other options available within that web shop or even within other web shops. And that's new services that they can offer thanks to those microservices and thanks to ecosystems which are connecting web shops with financial institutions in this case. And that's a bit what we're trying to achieve with the ecosystem, where we have this one platform, the Trustbuilder ecosystem, which allows users and companies to sign up towards that platform, so that they can access multiple partners without having to do the integration for each of those partners and the negotiations between those partners over and over again, as well as for the partners that are offering those services, avoiding the need to get into contact and to give support towards all the different kind of companies that want to access their different services. And that's a bit the use case that we're building there. If you look at traditional access management systems, identity and access management systems, on the left, we're always talking about features like multi-factor authentication, adaptive authentication, single sign-on, and basically very high-tech technical features. And thanks to those ecosystems and those API and attribute managements that we can provide, we can talk more about business value on access management rather than just the technical features. We can talk about giving a better customer experience, creating more revenue, and finding new business flows and business mechanisms to keep the customers within you as a company. So I hope that was a bit clear.
It was. Not only a bit clear, no, it was very clear. Thank you very much for that, Kurt. I haven't even had the time and the means yet to ask attendees for any questions or comments. So if anybody has a question or comment, then please do so. Let me maybe start by raising a couple of comments and questions. In the first place, of course, thank you very much for the overview and the presentation and the perspectives in this case, also from Trustbuilder. You indeed tried, in any case, to limit the commercial talk and references, but of course it's completely integrated with your solutions and the things that you do, so that's quite normal. Now, we gave a couple of examples on how you guys are doing this and types of customers. What is the typical demand driver today for such a platform? Is it really that organizations like, for instance, banks are transforming towards this digital new or digital normal maybe, and just being confronted on a day-to-day basis with the fact that they need to manage this either directly with something custom built, or how does it come about? So what's a typical moment in a lifetime, let's say, of an organization that they think, okay, we might need to do something here in this space?
Yeah, well, what we see, and it's And I don't want to focus too much on the banks, because within the banks, of course, it may you see some banks migrating there, and they have the competition of the fintechs and the big techs going more and becoming more prudent within their markets. But what we're seeing now is also a lot in other verticals, and then especially in insurance, but also in HR, where in the past, okay, they started creating APIs to give access to their systems, and that's of course sharing is caring technology and that ecosystem. And in the past, that was very nice for those companies, so that they could easily allow their consumers, their customers, to connect towards their services. But what they're seeing now popping up more and more is that there are new players using those same APIs, not only from their specific companies, but from multiple companies, adding that to their system, and by that becoming competition of the traditional HR companies and insurance companies by offering new services. And that's something where we see the demand coming from the traditional systems, in asking them to help to go faster in that development. HR systems, for example, that want to connect towards transportation systems, because that will give them additional benefits in linking their customers' employees towards those applications. For example, if you need to buy a train ticket and you need to expense it, instead of just working with the ticketing system and putting it in an envelope and an Excel sheet, giving it over to HR, well, by interconnecting let's use the Belgian example or the Flemish example of the lane towards that HR application, those users can just open their HR application and buy a ticket of the lane directly through their HR system. They don't need to pay for it anymore. It goes directly from the employer's account, and it's invoiced directly, and it's a benefit both for you as an employee as for the employer who has less administration, and as well for the HR organization, which which keeps the connection with their customer. Another example is, for example, within insurance. Everybody has an insurance, of course, for their house or the water or the fire and whatever. But if something happens and you need that insurance, it's always a big hassle to find somebody who wants to fix it and get the claim or the what do you say, the quote that the person who is going to fix it. He needs to create a quote. You need to send that quote back towards the insurance company. They need to send somebody over to evaluate whether the quote is in line with their expectations. I mean, if everybody who had some damage probably knows how difficult that is. So they are integrating that as well and working with privileged partners, repair people, integrating that whole system as well, so that they know that if somebody from that company is looking at you, okay, then we can be certain, and the process goes a lot smoother. And they're also taking it even a step further now, that if, for example, if you have what do you say, a plumber in need of a plumber, that you can even contact your insurance company, not just for when there's some kind of a damage, but also if you just need a plumber for some new systems that you can do. And that's for them also beneficial and giving extra value towards their consumers, but as well as for their partners, with the plumbers that they're working with.
Okay, so you're a plumber service.
Well, actually, yeah, that's what we're always saying. What we do is we lay the different foundations, the different het loodwerk within the building of your company.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, it can sometimes be a dirty job, but somebody has to do it, so that's fine. Daniel is asking in the Q&A how it relates to IoT devices, specifically for also in industrial contexts like the ones that I showed before. I think mainly you've been talking about applications connecting, about identities connecting, but what about devices connecting?
Devices connecting, yeah. Well, going back, I mean, those as well. It's very important for companies that the more IoT devices are available, that you can make use of those as well. Going back to the insurance example, where IoT devices are available within consumers. I think about a fire detector, within your house, the smart housing systems.
Domotics,
Domotica,
yeah.
indeed. Yes, sorry, I was looking for the name. Or in your car, those kind of IoT devices that are available, allowing you to get better. I know there are a lot of insurance companies already working on this to make sure that IoT devices within your car give them all the information to give you better insurance policies. If you drive safe, that you get a better rating than people who are not driving so safe.
Yeah, yeah. So in concrete terms, Kurt, how does this work? So let's say that we have a system that's running basically a series of IoT devices. Those IoT devices would need to connect somewhere to a digital platform. Where would you position the broker service and the plumbing service?
What we need to do there, indeed, because it's fine that if you want to connect your car system, let's take, that's a very good example. I think if you have an IoT device within your car, that car can of course be used by multiple users, and I don't want my insurance policy to increase or my insurance payment to increase because my wife is driving with my car at some time. So there we need to make the link between the IoT device and the user who is actually using the device itself. And that's something where access management can also work together by preferably seamlessly trying to authenticate the user which is operating some kind of a device, but also by users by other devices which are linked. I mean, if you always need to link it towards your internal systems, your ERP devices, ERP systems, and just having those devices in there is not sufficient. You need to link those devices also towards certain users. That's where we can also create the different lines between the user, the ERP system, the IoT devices, and the IoT backend systems as well. Okay, yeah. So you would somehow connect the IoT devices to an owner, the rightful owner in this case. To the rightful owner, and then to the different applications that you have within the company that are using that. Yeah, yeah, because of course the one thing that's difficult for many IoT devices to do is to provide their proof of identity beyond, of course, some technical components that they might have, and therefore the authentication. So I think that's also in relation to of course the API broker environment that you provide. Even yesterday we had a conference call, webinar discussion about enterprise security architectures, where specifically the API security was a major challenge, and also towards, in this case, the connecting devices. So I think there's definitely room for improvement in that space. Now, in the world of cloud, how would you see the future in this space, in this domain? Are there going to be multiple Trustbuilder alikes in the world? Will this service be maybe handled by
a company that thinks they can do it themselves, and so if so, what do they need to look out for? So how do you see the future for all of this going forward?
Yeah, so at least this way I hope that it will go. What we saw in the past is that large companies are doing everything themselves. They're building their own access management system based on on all those open source applications that are available. And what we're seeing today, that even extremely large organizations, one of those organizations being a financial institution, HSBC, which has about I don't know how many employees, but I do know that they have around 100,000 IT people working for that organization. So it's pretty big and they're very powerful. But what we're seeing even with them is that they're relying more and more on commercial applications to do the access management towards those systems. And one of the reasons is that because it's becoming it's not just about their core focus anymore. When we're talking about those ecosystems, integrating a plumber service towards your insurance company, that's not the core of an insurance company anymore. And even if you're a very large organization, it's becoming very difficult to do everything yourself. And what we're hoping with Trustbuilder is by because we are a Belgian company, we're trying to focus on those local on those local connections towards the lane, the NMBS, and those local services, trying to specialize us in that and making sure that we can differentiate ourselves from the bigger American players who will probably not even integrate something like the Belgian EID system into their systems.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, but beyond the Belgian market, there's of course also likely interesting platforms and relations that you might be able to connect to. Okay. So, what do you see as additional developments that you might be looking for within the platform in terms of maybe also partnerships? What would you as this platform be looking out for? Because I mean, there will be likely many different types of multi-factor applications popping up, multiple authentication systems being made available. Maybe we could connect over Netflix, maybe we could connect over Facebook, using our mobile phones, using whatever token that we might have, maybe an implant or something of a kind. So do you see? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so what we're looking for, so on the typical authentication mechanisms and the standard connections towards the Salesforce and the Office 365, or the authentication mechanisms like It's Me, like the biometrics and everything. That's something that we will do, of course, completely ourselves, and we keep on developing on this. But what we're looking for in partnerships is basically those organizations that want to offer their services towards ecosystems. So if I go, what we want to do with that ecosystem is make it available for everybody. And if you're looking towards promoting your services to a larger audience, financial in this insurance, HR, or whatever, is that you create that you offer those APIs through our Trustbuilder ecosystem, and then can reach a larger audience of other companies that can make use of your services on top of it.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much for these useful insights. We don't have any more questions from the audience. I think you've done a great job in giving us a perspective on different developments in the space on the one hand side, but also on the way that we need to consider platforms and applications in this domain, and also how we should be considering to integrate them in any case into our own thinking of developments and of security when we consider new applications and new systems and architectures to be developed. So I thank you in any case for that, and definitely also for making it this early in the morning. And are we getting some additional reactions from the audience? Thanking also you for this. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to present some ideas towards the next upcoming of these webinars. So next week is a day off here in Belgium, like in most countries throughout Europe. So we're going to take a break on May 21st. I will be there, but probably most of you won't. So we'll just skip that one to a next session, and taking it forward in that case on May 28th, when we'll be having again a presentation from ForgeRock, who will be coming back after the first introduction with some in-depth use cases of modern identity and access management. So definitely something to look forward to. The week afterwards, we have an intervention from PwC again, with Hendrik Parmentier on the identity and access management culture, how to also make sure that this gets sticky within the organization itself. And then on June 11th, together with Wouter Janssen from Excellent Tracks, we'll be talking a bit more about one of the topics that we actually also had planned for today, which would be more in relation to governance. So all the topics coming up are still in relation to zero knowledge proof, and further also on how to manage and integrate things like machine learning into identity and access, specifically in privileged account management, for instance. We have some other activities coming up. Unfortunately for today, our two of the invited speakers have fallen ill. So we're going to take a break also today at noon for our different data protection applications, and we'll be back also not next week, but then the week afterwards with the GDPR Salon Online. So some of the things in any case happening afterwards will be on ISO 27001 GDPR approaches, and then new developments of the data protection authorities in the different member states, how they see specifically the development of GDPR, but also e-privacy, and the way that we see fines and discussions popping up about the roles of the DPO and their expected conflicts of interest or non-conflict of interest in this case, and then some panel discussions with practitioners in the field. Next week, we still will be having a number of talks. On the first one will be next Tuesday in the morning on 5G again, how member states are adopting a risk-based approach in terms of putting into place 5G. And then the weeks afterwards on May 26th, we have an interesting topic on AI for cybersecurity. Can real AI please stand up? Thanks to Ralph from GData. And so we'll continue with the different series, the LSEC from Home series moving forward. With this, I would like to thank you all for joining again this early morning. I'd say we can head off now to our next discussions and interactions, and I'm hoping to see you again very shortly in one of our next webinars. Kurt, thanks again for joining, and thanks to Trustbuilder for taking this interactive session.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Have a nice morning again, and stay safe and healthy. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.